Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. Tonight we are going to be first we're looking back to BYU's game against the Nail Biter against Arizona, and we're going to be looking ahead a little bit to the Holy War this week, as well as making power rankings and finally our picks for Week 8 as we get into this. I'm Trevor, and this is Adam. So thank you for joining us. While you're here, if you love the Holy War, whatever side you're on, and you love the Big 12, please like this video, subscribe to the channel. We got some good stuff for you tonight. So before we get into that, though, I took my kids tonight to chess club at the library, and I got challenged to a game by a kid. I turned him down.
How old was this kid?
How old is he? He's maybe 9. Yeah.
See, there's not a way that there's a good outcome with that, Trevor, because if you say yes and you win, you beat a 9-year-old kid at chess. and if you say yes and you lose, you lost to a 9-year-old kid at chess. So there's not a good outcome from that. Or if you say no, then you're just kind of the jerk
Then
guy.
I'm just thinking, well, I acted like I was watching my kids play, and so I was invested in them.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Well, say yes and then let him win. Then your conscience feels good, and then he feels good. And gets a false sense of confidence.
The guys running it, one of them is this Russian guy, and then there's this other guy, and they're very stern with the kids. And I was watching a game, and at one point, I at the end, I was like, "Oh, you get to tip the king." You know, I thought when you get him a checkmate, you tip. And he said, "Oh, you don't do that." And he already, gave me a talking to earlier. So I was like, I don't want to play with this guy looking over my shoulder while I by a 9-year-old. So there was just really no good outcome for that. So, I mean, that's much like, you have a P4 team and they schedule an FCS team on there. Like, yeah, you might get a freebie on your schedule, but if you beat them, it doesn't count for anything. It doesn't give you any, it doesn't help you build your resume at all. And you could potentially lose or get in a close call with them. And then it just looks bad. So,
Yep.
I I was in one of those situations, and I wanted to maintain my ranking. So
You declined.
I declined. Yeah. Isn't that like
You
boxing
didn't feel like
too?
there was value to a warm-up preseason-ish game, rest
Yeah.
your starters after the first quarter kind of game.
Yeah. Anyway, so lesson learned though. But anyway, so speaking of a no-win situation, well, I guess it was, but BYU against Arizona, this was a game that, I guess on the opposite side, both teams came in with a lot to prove. And I think we left with still a lot of questions about both teams. I felt like we were going to have some answers about Arizona and or BYU after this game and kind of get a better idea of who these teams are. And I left still not really having a good sense. Like, we'll get to it when we get to our power rankings, but I was like, I still have a hard time with some of these teams because there's still so much up in the air. We're still trying to figure out who
it's still very Big 12-y.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why we love the conference. It's insanity week in and week out. This game was no exception. And thinking back on it, I still feel the same way that if there had been no weather delay, I think BYU rolls. Because you look at it and you had the funky, post weather delay play really for 2 quarters where BYU just can't seem to get their minds wrapped around the game. But if you look at the first quarter, utter dominance by BYU, and in the fourth quarter, I think it was Greg Wrubell's stat that says there was a stretch there where BYU snapped 26 plays to Arizona's 3. And then you go into overtime, and Arizona has 2 shots in the red zone and walks away with 1 field goal. They were 1 for 5 in the red zone against BYU. And so I think as a BYU fan, I'm comfortable with the fact that the weather delay threw us for a loop. Well, you saw who we were in the first quarter. You saw who we were in the fourth quarter and overtime. My heartburn going into this weekend is we're at the point where for the next 3 games, you have to play complete games. You can't do this anymore. You can't do it. Well, we had a pretty good this or that. We had a letdown here, but we're still putting it together. We got a freshman quarterback. We don't have that anymore. You're 6-0. You play good enough to win in every game. And BYU does a lot of the playing to the level of their competition. They always have under Satake. It's okay. I don't hate it as much as some other fans, but it's time. It's time. You got to have a complete game now, because that's the only way I see us winning against Utah. It's the only way I see us winning against Iowa State. It's the only way to have a shot against Texas Tech, who's playing out of their minds right now. So, particularly for the Holy War, it's time. It's time. You got to put it all together, because if you don't, I think you'll get steamrolled by Utah.
Yeah, because for like you're saying, in terms of the complete game, it's got to be one of those where you're winning the field position, you're backing them up against their own end zone, you're giving short field to your offense, and I think that's really the only recipe for success. Because if we start playing from behind again, you and where running down the clock like that when you're down 2 scores or more, and I just don't think BYU's really built. I mean, it worked out really well. It worked out perfectly against Arizona. I mean, I think better than maybe they'd even hoped. The fact that Arizona even threw it on that third down, and then you still had the 2-minute warning or whatever.
Yeah.
What do they call it? The 2 morning
Yeah. 2-minute timeout.
timeout, whatever. So, um, yeah. So it's gonna be a mud. I mean, this goes without saying, but and each week we've seen it in step up in competition. Maybe if you just switched, Colorado and West Virginia, maybe you see kind of that step up each week. You could argue about ECU, but this is by far going to be, I think, the toughest task that BYU's had. And it's funny because just a week or two ago we were saying, well, we don't really know who Utah is, but and you could still argue that because they really, outside of Texas Tech, who they ended up getting steamrolled by, really haven't played anyone. But kind of BYU hasn't either, and they've struggled. And Utah has been able to put teams away. And the other thing is, I don't think they get enough credit for what they did do through 3 quarters against Texas Tech. Now, did Utah struggle mightily? Sure, but they played Texas Tech better than I think anyone has this season. And then it snowballed in the fourth quarter. That happens. But I don't think that final score was truly indicative of how competitive that game was. I do think the better team won, but that's not saying much when you're as good as Texas Tech is. So, I don't know. Yeah, BYU has a tough, tough task ahead of them. The question is, do you think that this team has that next year, and can they put it together, and do they have what it takes to go up and really play that complete game of football against another very good football team?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
no
question that,
question.
in my opinion, they have it. They have the gear, they have the ability to do it, but they haven't proven it yet. And I say they have it because you watched it at times last year. You saw the K State game, you saw the Colorado game. You see the team has it, um, and I think they've been intentionally slow rolling this. And I think Arizona was meant to be the unveiling of the quote unquote complete game, and we were getting there when we got thrown for a loop. So I have a lot of confidence in the coaches and the game plan. Um, but the rivalry game just kind of throws that all aside. I also think this is K Witt's last game, and I think his team's playing for that. He hasn't announced retirement, but everybody knows he's knocking on the door, and so I think his team's playing for that, like some added motivation.
They're still pissed about last year.
They are. They're so mad about last year. I mean, but the thing is, it's not that you get anything more from Utah like that. They always play so angry in this game. Um, that's just their culture. They play angry most games, but more so for the BYU game. And so I don't know, man. I have so much trauma from this sports trauma from this rivalry. I shouldn't throw that word around lightly, but man, I was watching the highlights from the Arizona game with my son, who didn't get to stay up the whole time, and he saw the cut as an option after we watched it on YouTube. He's like, "Let's watch the cut." This was from the Utah game last year, and we watched it, and it was so much fun to watch the highlights from last year. And at the same time, I just felt sick to my stomach because that's the feeling you get when you start a rivalry game, and you're like, "Oh man, this could go one of two ways." And but when I look at these two teams, I'll make a bold prediction that doesn't necessarily have to pick a winner, but I think the winning team, this is always a close, close, close game, always. And I think the winning team this year wins by 2 scores or more, because I think the style of each team, the way they approach it, you're going to see a clear winner coming out into the second and third quarter, and I think they're going to start to pull away. Um, uh, the way Utah runs their offense, it is either deadly and effective, and Dampier is impossible to stop, or they're bottled up, and you've got the athletes to stop him, and he can't beat you with his arm. Um, on the flip side, either we're going to see Bear figure out this defense, and he's going to be dropping dimes, or he's going to struggle, and our receivers aren't going to get separation. We're going to see more interceptions, and we're not going to be able to establish a run game. I think we're going to know a winner of this game in the second and third quarter, and someone's going to pull away just because of how these teams are built.
That's interesting. I hope not, because out of the two teams, the one that has the more explosive offense when it's working is Utah, or at least has been so far. And speaking of which, I do want to point out, and going back to the Arizona game, you made me think of it in terms of the way BYU was rolling, and we talked about that, before the rain delay. But what we didn't point out was BYU's gotten off to a lot of slow starts this season, and then we felt like this was one thing they really need to get off to a faster start. They finally did, and then the rain totally.
I know.
Arizona had just scored a touchdown, so I mean, it was only 14-7. It wasn't like a complete blowout or anything at that point, but you really still felt like BYU had more of the momentum. So anyway, that is something that BYU is going to have to bring, and you can't like lose any possessions. And I'm worried because Utah, I think, has the type of defense that is, usually, well, you play defense, you're always giving up something, right? You have to pick where you're going to focus. And I think they have the guys up front to really cause some havoc and really work on slowing down the run game. And they might not have to bring as many guys to do so as maybe some of the other teams we played against, because they have such a dominant defensive line that they might still be able to make it really hard and clog up those passing lanes for Bear. And we know that they're good defense. They're going to throw some confusing schemes at him and disguise some of these coverages, which is good because he saw some of that against Arizona. He saw a more difficult defense than he had faced yet this season. So hopefully that was good preparation for him. But it's definitely going to be a big test in that sense. Now, so obviously defensively, that's tough. Offensively, if they're clicking, Dampier could start picking us apart. And that's where you have to start hoping. A lot of these guys, like a Jack Kelly, that were, on that, what did they get upgraded to?
Game time decision.
Game time decision. Is that I'm always trying to remember the proper order of those, but yeah, they were upgraded and they were there and decided to hold them out, which I think is the right thing. Hopefully, I just can't see Jack Kelly sitting out.
Oh, he'll play. He'll play.
And that changes the dynamic, because that gives you somebody, because you saw how much we struggled to get pressure onto Fafita, which is crazy. Because like with Jack Kelly, I think that's a different game, because when there's pressure on him, he made a lot of mistakes and got rushed, and that would have changed that game. But so I think you bring him against Dampier, and that definitely changes the dynamic.
It absolutely, and that's the reason I have hope in this game is Utah's offense has either been explosive and unstoppable or non-existent. I mean, you look in the first half of Wyoming or in the Texas Tech game, are really the only times that offense has been challenged, and they can't get anything going. And that's because the type of offense they play, and this has been Dampier in his whole career. He's either running for 100 yards in a game because he's so shifty and such a dynamic runner, or that element is taken away completely, and then he doesn't have the arm talent like Fafita does to pick you apart. He's completing like 70% of his passes. He's a good quarterback, don't get me wrong. He just doesn't have the elite arm talent to sit back there in a pocket and throw 40 times a game. If you look back at his career, that's when he throws the 3 interception. If he throws for 350 yards, he's throwing 3 or 4 picks. He doesn't have that next level in his passing game, I don't think, or at least he hasn't shown it yet. And so if BYU can make them one-dimensional and take away the run game, which they've done in the past to other teams, then you got a shot. But you're doing it against this vaunted Utah offensive line, and it's a tall task. And that's where, to me, that's the indicator of the game. I'm not looking so much at BYU's offense versus Utah's defense, even though that's obviously a premier matchup. it's BYU's defense against Utah's offense, to me, is the indicator of how well BYU is going to do. If they can stop that offense and they can bottle it up, then I think BYU's got a great shot in this game. But to me, it's Utah's offense is hot or cold. I don't think Utah's offense is going to score 21 in this game. I think they're going to score 10 or they're going to score 42.
That's a good point. That ruins my score prediction for this weekend. But mostly, I'm just my score predictions hedging my bets here because I don't. Yeah, you're right. You're right, and we've seen that from them. The offense is completely, looks completely inept, or they are just absolutely rolling. And I like to think our defense is good enough that they're not just going to be absolutely rolling. And if that's the case, like if we get into a type of game with Utah that Texas Tech had with them, then I do like BYU's chances in a game like that because we've played in those, we've learned how to win in those, and I think BYU has the toughness and the grit to do that. On the other hand, yeah, if it starts becoming a shootout, I think that definitely plays to
Oh yeah.
Utah's
Yeah,
advantage.
I don't see us being able to hang with them in a shootout type game. I just don't think Bear has it against this offense this year. I think Bear
I'm not
will.
sure our receivers have it. Like, I
I
mean, we've got
agreed.
two really reliable receivers, three if you count Carson Ryan as a receiver, and
But I don't see Hagan getting the ball a lot, and I don't know if he's not getting separation on his routes. And then we haven't dug into our depth at all at receiver, and I don't know if this is the game to do it. But yeah, on offense, you look to LJ like you always do. If he's running effectively and he's getting 5-6 yards of pop, we're gonna be just fine. It'll set up the play action. And I do think BYU has a chance to do that. Utah has a fantastic front seven, but it's their DNs rushing the passer that's been the hallmark of that team. It's not necessarily been run stopping. And so I think BYU has a chance to move that ball and establish the ground game. And if you do that, then the play action will open up. But that to me is the other indicator of the game. One can, it goes back to sort of the classic football where can you stop the run? Can you establish a run? It's more important in this game than I think in any other game BYU's played in.
yeah, that's a great point. Because if they can get LJ, that's a different story. But obviously, Utah knows that, and you see what kind of game BYU had. Granted, BYU struggled for a while, but when LJ was just having his way, you can't slow him down like that. I think that's the way you're gonna. That's what BYU needs to get rolling, and Utah knows that. And so I think they'll do what they can to try and shut LJ down. And so that's going to put a lot on the O line to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that those lanes are there because if they are, LJ's gonna take them, and he's gonna get a beating in this game too.
Yeah.
They're gonna get him hard, but likewise, they're gonna have to try and get him down on contact. And he's gonna eke out 2, 3, 4 more yards after initial contact at least. So, yeah, it'll be very interesting to see this as a chess match and where BYU thinks that their advantage is, and what and vice versa in that battle. But I think it seems pretty clear that you got to key in on LJ Martin, force Bear to run it a lot, and try to shut down the receivers, which doesn't seem to be that hard. I mean, they certainly have their moments, but teams have been doing it, and so it seems like the best recipe for success for Utah. Anyway, I was going to share a few things here as we're talking about Utah. There are a few funny things as we get into rivalry week. Joe Wheat says, more like Devin Dangpier. Am I right? Uh, Stupid. Also, I get really upset when Utah fans call BYU the luckiest team in the country because the truth is so painfully obvious. BYU is just living right. Yeah. So,
Hey, magic happens, man. Magic happens.
oh, I still love some of those quotes, and the Max Hall just going off classless. I just all timers, all
I
timers.
love the Max Hall hates me shirts at these games, and then the pictures Max Hall takes with those fans. Those are awesome.
See
I love that.
that's pretty good. That's pretty good back and forth there between rivalry. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. I would love a lot more of that in this rivalry. Like it can be so much fun. Um, when you get the right type of BYU fan, the right type of Utah fan together, it's fun. It's a ton of fun. And unfortunately, it's just devolved into something so bitter and so angry. Um, and I love the way Kalani talks about that. I was thinking about that, listening to him on the cut from last year's Utah game, and he talks after the game about how his esteem for the University of Utah and how we're a brotherhood and we need that love in our community and things like that. And it's so important because of what the rivalry has just, I mean, it has just evolved into this bitter hatred. And I say devolved. Who knows what it was like in the '80s? But it just seems like it gets worse and worse as time goes on.
It really does. Well, social media doesn't help because everyone
That
just hates each other.
that throws gasoline on the fire. And really, that's like 3% of each fan base is on social media, and they're the worst on both sides. And you just see it, and you shake your head for both sides when you see what's happening on social media. And it doesn't, at least for me, it doesn't reflect reality with the Utah fans I know. It doesn't reflect reality with the BYU fans I know. But man, you just see people online, and you're like, man, that's an unfortunate representation of.
I don't normally get into any of that stuff. I'll read some of it. I don't usually get caught up in it, but somebody said something so dumb and I just made a little comment the other day. I must have been feeling feisty or whatever. And he went off and then like somebody else joined in and this conversation just like kept going. And I was like, I'm already like, I moved past it. And then I get like more notifications. I was like, oh, they're still talking about it. Wake up the next day. There's more notifications on my phone. I was like, nice. Seriously, I was just like pushing a button and it's just like, I was like, I need to get out of this. Like,
Yep. Yep.
so ridiculous. So yeah, that's not normally my style, but yeah, there's some funny ones. Like I remember back in the day after was it '08 and where Max Hall had all those interceptions and saw a bumper sticker that said honk if you've intercepted Max Hall. And, but
Oh, that's
I was
awesome.
like, all right, I remember that because it made me laugh. I was like, okay, that was good. You got us there. But
Yep.
so this account, Steven, I guess at M4Gbit, he's always putting up good graphics like this and good analysis. And I thought this was interesting because he's obviously BYU focused, but using his analytics and going through, his projected score has BYU at 28.6 and Utah at 32.5. And so even our friendly analytics here, even though you see well, how is this going? Because I assumed blue meant BYU, but no. Oh no, I think it's just how high either one of them is, and so you can see they're pretty even in most categories across the board. You go at some of them, like obviously big discrepancy there, but in ranking and here as well as fourth down conversions. But you see, like both of them pretty solid from top to bottom. But yeah, when I see things like that, it doesn't bode well. But even this has the game within a single score, which you're saying just does not seem likely. You think either way, a team is going to get
Yeah,
rolling.
I get why all the analytics show it's that close, because I think it's so hard to tell. BYU's undefeated. Utah's lost just the one game. They've looked great against a team like Arizona State. I mean, just steamrolled them. That game is probably a little different with Sam Levitt, but unlikely that Arizona State's going to swing it that much. And so, at the very least, Arizona State should have shown up better defensively. Uh, they didn't lose a starting quarterback on their defense, and let Utah put up 42. So I get why the analytics are showing this, but I just think it's the way, the style of each team, particularly of Utah's offense. That is a go or no go type offense, and it was the same way at New Mexico with Jason Beck as offensive coordinator. They would put up a ton of points, or they would put up very few points. And so it's just that type of offense. It reminds me a little bit of the first years of Taysom with Robert and I, where you go so fast. And this isn't necessarily tempo offense, but it has similar results where you're either moving, you're on schedule, right? Utah's first in the country on third down conversion rate because they stay on schedule on first and second down, and you do that or you don't, or you got a defense that's figured you out, and Jack Kelly is stuffing Devin Dampier in the backfield all the time. You can't get your run game going. You're punting really quick all the time. There's a bunch of 3-and-outs, and I think you're going to see one or the other. I don't think you're going to see a 32-28 score, because if Utah really starts moving, I think BYU's in big trouble.
Yeah, and those 3-and-outs and forcing Utah to punt is a big advantage for BYU, and that goes without saying. I mean, that's an advantage for any team you play with. That's the whole point of the game. You're trying to force that, but that is like BYU's bread and butter. Like that is where they start thriving. Is it again that field position and everything. So
Yep, let special teams be special, and
exactly.
pound the rock. And I think under Bear Bachmeyer with our current receiving core, that's what you got. That's the MO right now for the Cougars, and it works. It's working, and I do expect BYU to play to the level of their competition here, like they have all year long. I think BYU comes out. You've got Jack Kelly, you got Tanavasa back, you got Isaiah Glasker. I mean, you're relatively healthy. You may be downgraded to Mooney, but Satuala is playing out of his mind right now. So I think BYU is pretty healthy on the defensive side of the football coming into this game, provided Jack Kelly can play the whole game with his shoulder. And so I like our chances to do that. But as an extremely biased BYU fan in this, it just anytime you're in a rivalry game, man, it just worries you. It never goes as planned. The numbers never add up. Last year we should have won by 30, right? And we eke out a victory, and our offense can't do anything. It's just and it has been flipped other times when it looks like Utah's going to steamroll us, and we pull a rabbit out of a hat. You never know walking into this game what's going to happen ever, and that's what makes it so much fun and so terrifying when you have a lot to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always like a nervous wreck going into these games. Always, always. In fact, it goes back to even when I was a kid. I remember being a bit nervous for it, even when I didn't really know what was going on. And my dad's a Ute, and so I, felt somewhat conflicted rooting against my dad as a kid, but I did. So
We're proud
uh,
of your sacrifice.
he's been very supportive. He saved a lot on tuition when he's so.
Well, my first experience as a BYU, my first in-person game was 1993 rivalry game.
Oh wow!
1993 rivalry game at Cougar Stadium, and Utah kicks a 56-yard field goal to beat us with a minute left, and I'm sitting there sobbing in the stands at 8 years old, and like that is my first in-person memory of BYU football. So the cuts go really deep for this poor little mind here.
My first live BYU game was a Motor City Bowl against Marshall, which was not pretty. But
Oh, I remember that one too.
yeah, but my first introduction to the Holy War was 03, which is also not pretty, and it was miserably cold as well. And it also came, ultimately decided by a
Yep.
field goal. So that was not a great introduction to really. Was that my first? I don't think that was my first game at Lapel Edwards. No, I think I'd gone earlier that season. But anyway, okay, so I want to take a quick step back, still related to this, but there is, and I don't know if you've seen these floating around, but there's, did we really get beat that bad graphic that goes around? Someone uses the net success rate between the two teams to kind of show. It's kind of dumb. Like BYU was on the bottom end of this all the time last year. And even though BYU was winning, and that a lot of detractors from BYU were using it to point and say, hey, look,
Yeah.
BYU is not really that good. It's fluky, but using, so talking about the game against Arizona, so you can win, but come out behind the team that beat you or that you beat.
Mhm.
And how would you expect it to look against Arizona after this last week showing?
That's so tough to say because it was so split. We dominate the first and fourth in overtime. They dominate the second and third. So I almost feel like it should be maybe slightly favoring Arizona because we had to dig so deep and come back out. But that's just a guess.
Yeah, I was surprised, and I did not see BYU on here. It took me a moment because I was looking down here expecting it to be, but BYU is, and I know this is small, is right here, which is really on the upper half of the teams included on this chart. Now, this isn't every game that I believe that was this weekend, but let's see if I can, make this bigger. But yeah, I was surprised. Oh, that's not helping at all. It's just getting worse. So yeah, BYU in terms of success rate over Arizona. So they
So
were
basically one of the wider gaps of the teams that won.
Yeah, I mean, right there, kind of in the middle-ish area, on the high end of the middle-ish area. But yeah, I mean, not so far off of what Utah's beat down to ASU. I mean, this is Utah and
Yeah.
ASU,
Interesting.
not competitive at all.
And one's in double overtime and the other one is a beatdown.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a fascinating graphic.
Very
It
interesting.
And really, that's why I feel so much confidence about the BYU football team is this. It feels like we're doing so well, and there have been kind of fluky things that come up and throw us off our game. Where it felt like the ECU game, we put it all together, and I think ECU is a great team, and that was probably our most complete game against a solid opponent on the road. And so I do feel like if we bring that version of BYU to the Utah game at home, we're going to be in pretty good shape. But it's a fair argument to say, well, Colorado, well, you had some weird meltdowns against West Virginia, and or yeah, well, the Arizona game, and it's a fair argument at this point. I was kind of dismissing that with Colorado and West Virginia, but it's hard to dismiss it 3 weeks in a row. But it feels that's where it feels like we're at. We were when we dug in and really focused on Arizona, got past the whole weather delay stuff. We were clearly the better team on the field.
Mhm.
Clearly, we dominated when we dominated, and when Arizona won those 2 quarters, I don't know if they were dominating, but they were beating us. We didn't have an answer for what they were doing, or it was one bad play, you throw the interception, whatever it was. But that's how I feel like we are. It's just so hard to have confidence in it now, 6 games into the season. And where's the team psyche at? Do they believe they can put it together?
I think this team does. I don't know. I haven't seen as much. Like last year, I was like, man, this team just has this other year. They just know there's something special. I feel like a little bit of that is missing, which is surprise. And I don't know if that's just we're not in the locker room. It's hard to say, but that's what it feels like from the outside, and which is worrying because a lot of those guys are the same guys that are back. And if
Yeah.
so, if that's missing, that does worry you because that means that there's something that they're seeing. They went through an experience last year, and if they're not feeling that same confidence, that means they're not seeing the same thing this year with the team. And so hopefully they do have it. But yeah, just looking at this for a point of reference. So like Colorado came out on the losing end, about the same differential as BYU and Arizona. So even though Colorado won, they're below Iowa State. See, and this is where you can only read so much into this. Like Ohio State was below Illinois. I mean, it only means so much, but like K-State,
Yeah.
ECU, that one's pretty close. ECU Tulane, that was like a back and forth game, really came down to the wire. And that one is what you'd expect it to be really close. Texas Tech barely above Kansas, and that
That's
game was
interesting.
close. So again, there's only so much you can read into this, but I do think it's an interesting graphic nonetheless. I don't know
Yeah.
how much it tells us, but it's interesting. There's
Yeah, it is.
something
Mm.
there, but not at all predictive. Now, real quick before we jump to our power rankings, I do want to say one more thing. So I like this tweet, which is awesome. A brief pause from Holy War Talks just to say, whatever happens as the season plays out, the fact that BYU starts the season one spot ahead of Kentucky in Mark Pope's second year after bolting is actually hilarious. So, I mean, let's take a look at this. BYU
Uh,
at
that
8.
is good.
I gave our pal Jackson Payne, who's now an AP voter, I gave him a bad time. He posted his top 25. He had BYU, I think, at 7. I told him the fact that he doesn't have BYU at number 1 means that he's not a serious voter on here.
For
So,
real. Let's call him out.
yeah, I
Clearly.
did. Yeah, he's got to answer for that. Um, we need to hold these voters accountable. But no, so I mean that's awesome. We knew BYU was going to come in high. We knew they're kind of in that range somewhere between 5 and 10, I think was to be expected. And so
Mhm.
fortunately their schedule is set up as such that you take care of business, the poll will take care of itself. And so I'm not too worried about that. I think it's the highest that BYU's ever started the season ranked.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And inevitably you'll see 3 or 4 of these teams drop out of the top 25 in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. I mean, it happens every single year. You look at these and they all look like locks. Like they're just going to be awesome, and inexplicably some of these teams are going to drop, and who knows who that's going to be. But if BYU can hold their own, and like you say, take care of business, they'll climb those rankings, and it'll be a pretty cool year.
What I love to see is, as opposed to football, here we've got 3 of the top 10 are out of the Big 12. So hopefully that is one
Yeah,
thing one
see if
trend
you
that
can hang on to that. I'll
Yeah.
tell you, last year I don't feel like we performed up to par, or the year before. The 2 years we've been in the Big 12, I don't think the Big 12 was represented as a basketball conference like they should. And the SEC has made huge grounds catching up to us, and now they got the defending national champ. So we really got to step it up this year, and Big 12 needs to represent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we'll get into there's going to be time for a lot more basketball, but now's not quite the time,
Yeah.
but we do want to give it a little shout out. But we will, I don't know what we're going to do once the season starts and overlaps with football. We'll have to figure that out because there's going to be so much, well, good vibes, I think, going regardless of what happens this
Yeah.
weekend. let's not think about that. So all right, so let's switch gears now. Let's get into our power rankings. And this one was another one that, I mean, I thought when it got to this point that there would be more and more clarity. And in some ways there is with this, in the sense of we kind of, but more by tiers, which we've talked about. So my difficulty is really figuring out is the between teams, because there's teams that, and we'll get into it, they seem like they're trending down, but they've beaten other teams that are trending up, and it's like, okay, so now how do I weigh these, even though this one team trending down won the head to head? So
Yeah. Yeah.
uh
My tiers exploded, and these are like spiteful picks this week. I'm all over the place. So
okay,
I really slammed some teams for some losses, and um I blew up all my tiers. This doesn't even resemble last week's, except for my bottom two. You can always
okay,
pick the bottom two.
well, good. I'm very curious to see how much, yeah, mine right in the middle really mixed around a lot, but okay, so bottom two, I think it's safe to say OSU, West Virginia.
Yep. No need to say more. Still the
Okay,
bottom two. Going to be the bottom two.
perfect. Great. So why don't we start at 14?
All right. 14. I got TCU.
Oh,
Yeah. I think that they have been what do they call it? A paper tiger? I mean, just uh, I think they're winning games they were supposed to win. I think their defense is a bit of Swiss cheese. They went into Colorado. Colorado played spirited football. That's a better football team than they have played. Then Colorado is better than the way they've played on the field thus far. They have a lot of talent, and they started to put it together. But come on, TCU. I just feel like anytime TCU gets into a big game, they they uh they I'm sorry, I'm talking about Kansas State, not Colorado. That's ISU. We'll get there. But going into Kansas State, same story. Great team, great talent, have not played to expectations. You cannot lose that game if you're TCU. So anytime TCU has the big game, Arizona State, Kansas State, anytime they face stiff competition, they melt. And so they're at 14 right now. Mostly because they don't have a good signature win to put under their belt.
hmm. See, I think they've still done enough. I've got them midway here, so we'll get to them in a second. But I've got at 14, I have UCF, and it's not that I think UCF's that bad. I think they're a feisty team. I think they've just gone up against better competition so far, and I think they'll still get a few more. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up bowl eligible. But right now, I just don't think they've done enough. And that UNC victory for both TCU and UCF is not really holding up real well.
True. True. All right, 13. I got Baylor.
You
Not
really
much
hit
more to not
hard.
much more to say about them than kind of a drab of a season so far. We've talked about them. We'll see what happens this week. You got my 13 and 14 playing each other, and one of them will get a little momentum for the rest of the season.
Yeah, the revivalry. I refuse to call it whatever, the Blue Bonnet Showdown or whatever they're trying to call it. Speaking of which, did you notice that because they were really pushing the Red River Showdown for so long, even though everyone called it Red River Rivalry, and they went back
Hmm.
on the field. It even said rival, like the official
Oh,
logo said
good.
rivalry
It's
again.
about
So
time. Got to
yeah,
embrace it.
I think the revivalry is just such a good. It is
It
that is a
is.
top
That's a
top
good.
tier.
That's a good name. You got to have a
It's
good name for your rivalry.
It's so good. It's so good on so many levels. Like, just go back to it. The Blue Bonnet, whatever. That's just overthinking it. It's not organic. They're killing these things. And I also have these two teams ranked. I have them more in the middle, but they're right next to each other. And same thing. We're gonna see because they've even played similar schedules. Both of them have beaten SMU in close games. Both of them had the exact same score, losing to ASU. Granted, one of them was at home,
Yeah.
one was away, but so there are a lot of similarities. I do have them hand in hand, but I have them farther up. So at 13, I have Colorado, and again, a lot of talent, and they had a big win this last week, so it's crazy to have them behind
Yeah.
teams.
Not giving them any love for the big W.
You know, let's see a little bit more, but the problem is more they're digging themselves out of a deep basement here. But I could see it switching because some teams are trending down.
Yeah.
Because right after them, or right ahead of them, I guess, I have Kansas. And so that is a big fall for Kansas. They now have 3 losses. Now, the 3 losses are not bad losses, like to who they've lost to. Missouri's a very good team. That was a pretty competitive game. Texas Tech, no shame in that. And then it's escaping me. Who was the third loss they have? Uh,
Mizzou.
no, I said Mizzou.
We said Mizzou.
It doesn't matter.
Is it Cincy?
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah. So
was it?
I
Good
believe,
teams, right?
yeah.
All good teams.
And that one was surprising at the time, but since he's now ranked and rolling, so not like terrible losses, but they just really seem like they're trending down, and they had a lot of potential and haven't really been able to stabilize the ship.
Yeah. So that was your 12 was Kansas.
Yeah.
12 is my other really spiteful pick, Iowa State. Just laid an egg again. I mean, a la Penn State, to a much lesser degree. The wheels are coming off, and I think this is more due to injury than the team. I think Matt Campbell's a great head coach. I think it's a good program, but they don't have the it factor. I didn't feel like they had it from the beginning when they struggled against Arkansas State. They struggled against Kansas State. They put together a great game against Arizona, and you're thinking, okay, now Iowa State's rolling, and then 2 losses back to back. Their secondary is decimated, and so I felt like from the beginning of the year between Texas Tech, BYU, ISU, Utah, maybe TCU, one of those teams, whoever stayed healthiest was going to win. It was going to come down to injuries. I think they were all pretty equal. And I think Iowa State's sort of in that conversation. They were underperforming a little bit, but now you got the injuries and they're out. I think their secondary is Swiss cheese, and I think we're going to continue to see them lose.
Okay. I agree with that. I do think they're definitely trending down. I have them have a big drop this week, but I do think that they've still accomplished a lot. Like that beat down of Arizona. They started off the season pretty strong, although looking back, you can question some of those wins now, but I still think they've done enough under their belt to keep them up above some of the other teams. So at 11, this is where I have K-State. And now this is good. They're trending up. They had a big win this week, but they were coming out of the cellar, and so they had a long way to come up. It does look like they're starting to figure things out. We did think that this team had the potential. It just took them longer to do it than we expected, and maybe they just needed to get that pressure off their back or whatever, because at this point the season is what it is. So
yeah, they're getting scary.
But yeah, and they could play spoiler, and that's what I'm worried about. I'm glad we don't have them on BYU schedule this year, at least not in the second half, where Kansas State looks like they could really start messing things up for teams.
Yep. At 11, I've got UCF. Same reasons you listed. I think they've got it. They're not in the bottom 3. That's where I thought they'd be this year, and they're climbing. They've got some chances to put some things together in Scott Frost's first year and make it a good rebuild. But 10, just above them, I've got Kansas. Again, same reasons you've listed. I think some good wins, but boy, some head scratching losses. I will say they were in the game against Texas Tech at halftime. What was it, 17-24? They were putting up some points. It's just clear that Texas Tech finishes strong. So I think you got to be out ahead against Texas Tech to have any shot against them, because these teams that are just sort of nipping at their heels, they just stomp them in the fourth quarter. So, but again, no shame in that. We'll see if they can continue to turn their season around.
Yeah. I think their losses aren't bad, so that's why I didn't want to hit them too hard, but it does feel like they're trending down now. They still have a chance to also make some noise. They have a couple conference losses already, but they could still come in and do some damage as well. So I wouldn't write them off. Just I think for where they're at right now, I could see them, winning a lot of the remaining games and really moving back up to where we had them earlier in the season. So you said Kansas at 10.
Kansas was 10. Yep.
Okay, so I've got Arizona at 10, and I mean, I'm not sure who they are, and so some of this was more because I felt like they had to be behind Iowa State, who that's where I have Iowa State is at 9, and, again, I feel like they'd done enough that couldn't put them, like, completely in the basement, and I felt like it was just a couple weeks ago that Arizona played at Iowa State, so I didn't feel good that even though Iowa State has looked maybe better since that, putting them ahead of Iowa State, so I was trying to make this whole thing make sense, and so that
That was honorable of you. I can't make it make sense. I'm going. You'll see where I've got Arizona later on. 9, I've got Arizona State. Laid a complete egg with your backup quarterback at Utah. Based on who we thought Arizona State was, you shouldn't lose like that to Utah at Utah, even with a backup quarterback. You should put up some kind of fight there if you are the team that we thought you were coming into the season, defending Big 12 champs, shot at the title game again. No more shot at the title game. It's bad news that Levitt's out. It's not that he was doubtful. It's not that he was questionable. He's out, so that may be multiple weeks. We don't know. At least I haven't seen anything of what the nature of the injury is. But it's bad news for Arizona State, and I think they're going to continue to lose. They draw Texas Tech this week, and that'll pretty much put them out of contention for the Big 12 title game.
Oh, thank goodness. And see, you're right. Everything you said is completely right. I just think that they've done enough. And again, I was trying to make it make sense. So at 8 is where I have TCU, and then 7 Baylor. Again, I felt like they've had pretty similar records. I think Baylor's done a little bit more in their season, just a touch, even though they've done similar things. And I think they've looked a little bit more solid. I have a little bit more confidence in Baylor, so that's why I gave them the nod over TCU, despite their similarities. And then I had put Arizona State above them because they beat both those teams, in head-to-head matchups. And I feel like 6 seems a little high for ASU based on how bad they got beat down, but it was their backup quarterback, and so I give them a little bit of leniency. But I haven't really believed in them all season. They started proving me wrong, and I started second guessing myself. And like you said earlier in the show, even with Levitt, I don't know if that flips the script that much because their defense really didn't have anything going. Although it starts to compound, right?
It
When you have
does. It does. It all builds on itself, and I do think that needs to be recognized that their complete lack of offense is going to give Utah's offense that many more opportunities, and that did play into that game in the final score. So people say, well, Levitt's not worth 4 touchdowns or whatever. No, not necessarily, but him being able to be on the field and sustain drives and keep Utah's offense off the field for periods of time, that would have made a big difference in reducing Utah's offensive output and increasing Arizona State's offensive output. And so that's where you get a closer game, but it is nearly impossible to argue that Levitt would have made enough of a difference in that game to flip the end result of that game from a loss to a win.
So that was me playing Sun Devil's advocate. See what I did there?
Boom.
But on the other hand, and I said this on Saturday night, like Utah, on the other hand, oh well, last season doesn't count because our starter was hurt. So at the same time, then you can't really count this win over ASU for that. I mean, they can't go, and you can't have it both ways. So really, you can't give Utah full credit for this victory because they were going up against a backup quarterback. However, I find it so sweetly ironic that Texas Tech had their backup quarterback in against Utah. And so it goes to show you what real depth is. And that's what you have. Like if you don't have the depth, that's like on the team. You have to be able to have that depth. And which is something that BYU is running into right now. So anyway, all right. So that took me again. That was TCU Baylor ASU for 8-7-6 working up. So
8, I've got Kansas State. Giving them some props for that victory. I think they get in a head full of steam. I'm same with you. I worry about them. 7, Colorado. Yeah. A lot of love for Colorado because of what they did against Iowa State. I felt like this is a better team than what their record shows. They're having some growing pains, and I felt like the wheels came off for a few games there. They played Georgia Tech really close, and Georgia Tech is undefeated. And I think people forget that they had some of those games, and so they play us really close. They've had some close losses, and then they've had some real head scratchers. The Houston game is still confusing, but it was at Houston. They were still trying to figure out their quarterback situation. Caden Salter's settling in there, and he's looking pretty good. 7 is admittedly probably too high for Colorado. This was more of spur of the moment decision, and my frustration with Iowa State when I'm shaking my head at those who are supposed to represent our conference really well. But we'll give Colorado some props this year before they lose.
You're starting to vote. Your power rankings are looking a lot like the logic from the AP voters. So note to self. Don't, if you ever get the chance, I'm going to call them.
I'm gonna apply. I'm gonna apply for AP voting. I'll add to the chaos.
You certainly will. It doesn't matter. It's all fun and games. It averages itself out, or whatever.
Right?
That lady said. So, goodness gracious. I was gonna say something. I don't remember now. Okay, who do you have at 6?
Houston at 6. They're pretty good, and they just keep winning. I mean, they have not the most impressive wins, but they're the little engine that can right now. That defense is good. They're figuring stuff out offensively.
And see, I think this is because this is our remaining 5 teams are the same. You said Houston at 6. Okay, so
Yeah.
we're a little off, but so anyway, we're gonna have pretty much similarities from here on out, even if they're different order. But you're kind of at that tier once you get to that top 5 of contenders, and then you get to Texas Tech, which seems
I'm not at contenders yet. I'm not at contenders. I don't think Houston's a contender. I don't think my number 5 is a contender. Number 5, I have Arizona. And maybe this is again a spur of the moment decision based on the scar and relief of a double overtime victory over them. That was an impressive secondary. That's a very good offense. They've got some explosive possibilities there. They got crushed by Iowa State. But I feel like all of these teams in that middle tier have had at least one of those games where you just get blown out. And so Arizona's definitely not in my top tier. Houston's not yet in my top tier. They could get there. But I don't think that any of these teams we mentioned thus far will contend for the Big 12 title.
But here's the thing. Like, do I think Houston's as good as some of the teams ahead of them? Probably not. But look at the rest of their schedule. So they play Arizona at home, which I'm still not entirely sure of what to make of Arizona. I could see Arizona winning that game. But if Houston gets through that, then they go to Arizona State. Again, who knows what the status of level is and what the mental state of that team is at the time. Then they have West Virginia, then at UCF, and then they have the tandem of TCU and at Baylor. And so they don't have any of the teams that we have ranked ahead of them left on their schedule. And so
That's fair. They could run that table. And who did they lose to? Did they play Texas Tech?
They lost to Tech, and that's it.
So they
had a close one against Oregon State, but you can't tell me they weren't looking ahead to Texas Tech maybe and coming off a big win over Colorado, feeling pretty good.
And I'll tell you, in the Big 12, I don't think Houston can run that table. I don't. I think they'll be favored in every one of those games, but I don't think they'll run that table. They'll lose at least 2. I think Houston's a year away. They're close. That defense is good, and look out for Houston next year. And I think they're good. I think they end the season with 3 losses in conference.
You're probably right. I mean, if anything from the Big 12 has shown us anything, that absolutely, that is the most likely that they pick up some losses. I just think there is a path there for them. So to see that they are in contention,
it's interesting.
And at the end of the day, that might be a team that's in the mix with another tiebreaker. That it's a real case that we could have, a bunch of teams with 3 conference losses all tied, all waiting for some stupid, crazy tiebreaker just to see who can go play Texas Tech in the conference championship. So, as long as they take care of business for the most part and don't lose too many of the remaining games, they could still be in that. So, and so that's where I'm saying I still think they're technically a contender at this point. That's semantics, though. So, okay, so that
was my 5. Arizona was my 5. Who do you got? Yeah,
Houston at 5. Yeah. So who do you have at 4?
Cincy at 4. We talked about them last week. We'll see. They've got some tests coming up, but as of now, that's still a very impressive team with a very dangerous offense.
Yeah, I still think they're like a year away from being who they really, where they're trying to get. They do look to be a year ahead of schedule based on how bad they were last year. But that's kind of what BYU did last year. I don't know if Cincy's at the level that BYU was last year, but they could make some noise. I think right now they've done enough that I had them at 2 last week. I didn't think they'd stay there very long, but we'll see. I mean, they are ranked now. And I remember my other point I was going to make. You said you slammed ISU. Does anyone call them that? I write it, but Iowa State for losing, because you need the Big 12 teams to take care of business. But truthfully, I don't see us really ever getting more than 4 teams in the top 25 at a time.
No,
and
I
our
agree.
2 that lost were replaced by 2 other ones that took care of business. So now we're kind of at the point where there's not a lot of margin for error for these remaining 4 teams that we have at the top that are ranked in the conference. We do need these teams to continue to win out. But I think as long as we still have 4 that are squarely in the top 25, then that's kind of where we need to be. And so this last week, even though it kind of hurt, it goes counterintuitive. TCU, ISU, Iowa State lose. 2 other teams in Utah and Cincinnati move in. So anyway, I have Cincy at 3 right now. I actually have, and don't get mad at me, I actually have BYU at 4. I just have some question marks. Maybe this is just the nerves of the rivalry week coming around, but I feel like I have to be even with how I've graded the other teams, and BYU's won. And so I think they deserve credit for winning, but they've also been in some close ones and struggled some. And so I feel like
I feel like I shouldn't be on this podcast anymore.
Should I take this off?
BYU at 4. Yeah. Maybe that flag behind you shouldn't be on there. I mean, where's your fandom? I mean,
I think BYU could beat anybody in this conference. I just think if I'm basing, as I've done all season, off of what they've accomplished, they really, had they steamrolled Arizona, I would feel very comfortable putting BYU at 2.
You would be a great AP voter. You'd be really good.
Thank you. I'm taking this seriously because no one else in the AP does. So
at number 3, I've got Utah. And for all the reasons we've discussed, and next week they will not be at 3. I'll put it that way. They're either going to be much slower or a step above.
Fair enough. We've got into this a ton, and obviously that means I've got Utah at 2, which I don't feel great about on the week going into the rivalry week, but I feel like and I'm never this way. Like usually any matchup, I'm like BYU has a chance. Of course, like I feel good. And I just am more pessimistic about these games. Maybe it's like protection for myself because of the anxiety that it brings me. But so I don't feel good about it. I feel dirty. Go ahead and give me crap. I do think it's fair because of the level of beatdown that they issued on Arizona State this last week. The last few weeks, outside of Texas Tech, their offense has been rolling. And so I feel like they do get credit for that when BYU struggled a little bit. And here, someone coming to my defense says this is good analysis. So thank you, JT.
I thought he meant what I was saying. I think
it's probably what you're saying.
That's really what.
We can both pretend he's talking about.
That's right.
Our points. Okay,
we appreciate it, JT.
Make your case for BYU here at 2.
It's the wins. You find a way to win, and until someone beats them, they're going to be up there because winning, just win, baby. It's winning above all else. And yes, it's ugly at times. Yes, you lost your way for 2 quarters. You got to find a way to come out of a weather delay better than that. There's a million things but you win. At the end of the day, it's a W. And so when it comes down to power rankings, if you win, you rise to the top. And so for me, it's that simple. Texas Tech is number 1 because when they win, it's been more impressive than BYU. But they both keep winning. And so until something changes, they're at the top.
All right. Well, here's my graphic. I usually put this out after our video goes live, but I wanted to pull this up to show that Texas Tech, I don't know if there's any Tech fans going to be on here, but I had the updated bevel-free
You've
logo.
been asking for that forever. I thought of you when I saw that announcement.
They heard me. I mean, Oklahoma State did it a few years ago, and the logo was just better. It's on you now, Iowa State. Houston have it a beveled look, and they cleaned it up. Utah went to this look, which I like better. I'm in the minority. I think way more Utah fans prefer the drum and feather logo. I just think I've grown to hate that one so much. Now, these two are pretty similar, so I could see their gripe about that. But in terms of Bevel, Iowa State, it's on you now, please. And UCF, I think, as well. So
UCF's got it. Yep.
And UVA added it just a few years ago when Bronco was there, and so I thought
that's right.
Back that was backwards for me. But anyway, so this is mine. This doesn't reflect Adam's on here. I used to do one for both of us all the time, and it took way too much time. So now I just put out mine. So if you want one, you got to do your own. You got to pull.
That's right. I got to put in the work.
But anyway, so all right, let's do rapid fire picks here because I didn't realize we were gone this late. I need to pull up the schedule here in front of me while we do this, but it's getting harder.
It is. We're going to see some wild stuff, I think.
So let's see here. Big 12. Let me filter this. And okay, so starting with Arizona at Houston.
Arizona. I think they pull it out. A lot of respect for that team coming out of that game.
Where is my? Sorry. Oh, sorry. I'm on the wrong tab here. I want to get all this for posterity's sake, so we can I can rub it in. Okay, so I'm catching up here. I should have had this part prepped. So you're saying Arizona over Houston. I'm on the fence, so I'm going to go with Houston on this one. I just think Willie Fritz has the team rolling. I didn't completely believe in Arizona this year. Like, they were doing some good things. Hadn't played anybody really yet, and they did look good against BYU, but I think that was a game BYU should have won by more. So I think Houston, not that they're known for having a great home field advantage, but I think they defend home field and win it. Okay, Revivalry, which is what we are calling it here, not by any other on this show.
That's right.
Baylor and TCU.
I've got TCU.
Ooh, good.
For as much as I maligned them for their lack of ability to win a real game against a tough opponent, I think they got this against Baylor.
Okay. These two teams are very, very close to me in terms of, again, we talked about the record and everything.
Yep.
I am going with Baylor in this one. I do think they edge them out. You saw that in my power rankings. So going with Baylor in this one, but yeah, it really could go either way. It's a rivalry game, so it should be another really fun one to watch. We got that and the Holy War on the same weekend. I don't know what the Big 12 is doing with their scheduling, but that's the way it is. Okay. Yeah. West Virginia at UCF.
Oh, UCF, that's an easy one. Can't pick West Virginia in any game right now unless they're playing Oklahoma State.
For once, we agree. So, okay. Texas Tech at Arizona State.
That's Texas Tech. Poor Arizona State.
But
sit Levitt just so he can get healthy. Whether or not he can come back, just sit him.
What if they got Cam Scatteroo back?
I don't know that I could pick him, but it might actually be a close game.
Okay. All right. What about Cam Scatteroo and Jackson Dart?
Ooh, that's a good combo. Now we're talking.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I've also got Tech, obviously. We'll pick that one last. Okay. Cincy at Oklahoma State.
Cincy, it's a given.
What?
Come on, Oklahoma State. Show us something. Get me to pick you at some point.
Okay.
Show some life.
I think they will. That is my bold prediction, is that Oklahoma State will win another game this season. I just don't know who, because I've looked at their schedule. It doesn't matter really who's on their schedule, but UCLA's won some games. So Oklahoma State, I feel like they're bound to. I just feel like it's going to come at the worst possible time for the conference. It's going to be against it's going to be against like Texas Tech or something, and just completely derail the conference. But all right, and then lastly, we're at the Holy War, and for BYU, especially against Utah, we never really pick against BYU, although you have before in the past. But
I have in the past, not lately.
But yeah, not this season. But since we're always going to pick BYU, this is the one game that we kind of pick against the spread here. And so I'm trying to pull up to see if it has changed.
It was 3.5 when it started. I don't know if it's changed today.
Yeah.
3.5 for Utah.
I'm seeing that too. Do you pick over under? You said it was going to be a blowout one way or another.
I did, and I'm going to pick BYU to cover because I got to pick my boys to win this, which means BYU wins by 2 scores or more is what I'm saying. And I say that because I trust this defense to shut down Utah's offense, similar to how Texas Tech did it. I do think BYU's defense is as good as Texas Tech's defense when they are healthy, and especially at home. And we have those two things going for us. So I'm picking something along the lines of 21-10.
21-10. That would be fantastic. I would take that. I'm going to pick BYU to cover just because that means BYU wins.
Well, BYU's lower in your power rankings. Are you sure?
I did say I felt confident about it. So, like, if this were reversed and it said BYU, right, -3.5, I would probably pick Utah to cover, but BYU to win is probably what I would say.
Yeah.
But in this case, I'd just say BYU wins. I do think it'll be close just because it's always close. I see your point that it could be a blowout. I just kind of hope not, because I feel like Utah's better equipped to make a blowout like that happen. So score, I've been all over the place on where I think it'll end. I don't know. It could be something really weird, like, I don't know, 24-22 or something. I don't know, just something ridiculous like that. But I think it'll be close. I don't know. I'm not excited for this game after this last week. I was really looking forward to it all year, but now I'm.
Yep, I feel the same way.
Usual
After that Arizona game leaves a little bad taste in your mouth, then you go into the Holy War, and it looks like Utah's rolling and BYU's stumbling, and not a great way to line up the Holy War.
Oh boy, but that's what makes it fun, and then that makes it all the sweeter when BYU pulls out the victory. It makes it 3 in a row, right?
That's right.
Positive thinking. We'll put it out there. Jack Kelly's coming back. Dampier's not going to be able to get anything going, and BYU's going to win off of special teams, keeping those short fields.
There you go.
Okay, perfect.
You got it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Again, if you haven't already, please like the video, subscribe, and it really helps the channel keep growing. We appreciate it. We love these conversations. Join us. We will have a video midweek. We got the College Huddle podcast. Actually, my cousin's husband recently started a Utah show. He'll be on. He's got a couple guys that are big Utah trolls. It might just be family in this one, and so we can keep it decent and do some analysis of the game instead of name calling. But we'll try to keep it clean.
Good luck.
Thank you. And do that sometime midweek in preparation for this weekend, and then we'll go on live with live reactions after the game to hopefully celebrate the victory. So make sure you subscribe so you can catch all of that, and get ready during Holy War week. And everyone be kind, but only so kind. Some be kind, but you can take some.
Yeah. Make this fun. Make this fun again. Make the rivalry fun again.
Yeah, right. There's a nice way to do it. There's a classy way to do it. Maybe not for the Utah fans because they're classless. But no,
that's a great start of the week.
Shoot, I'm already ruined it. No, yeah. All right, appreciate it. And as always, go Cougs.
Go Cougs.